Now, the other day I saw one of the coolest apps that I've seen in a while. This is an app that you can simply paste a screenshot and it's going to generate the code for the screenshot. So meaning that you can easily clone all kinds of different websites. Take a look at this. This is the original New York Times. You simply take a screenshot and this is the replica that it produces. And here's another quick video where you can simply create a screenshot of a part of a website. In this case, this is Instagram. And it's gonna go ahead and actually replicate it for you as well. And once I saw this app, I was completely blown away, and I wanted to make a similar app as well for a slightly different use case. Now, this app uses something called GPT Vision behind the hood. And this is an amazing piece of AI technology that can essentially take an image and describe it for you in great detail, or do pretty much anything that you want to be done to that image, as you're going to see a little bit later in the video. And so in today's video, I want to explain to you what GPT Vision is, and a little bit later in the video I want to show you a proof of concept app that I built that showcases some of the interesting and innovative things that you can do with this amazing AI technology. Now be sure to stick around until the end of the video, because you definitely do not want to miss the results of this interesting experiment that got me psyched about this AI technology in the first place. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I demonstrate on this channel are going to be available to view and or clone from my Patreon page. And you can learn more about our amazing, rapidly growing Patreon community using the link in the description below the video. Now, first, let's talk about what GPT Vision AI technology is. So GPT Vision is actually a product from OpenAI, which is responsible for ChatGPT and other innovative AI products. And GPT Vision is a technology that's related to GPT that helps to understand images, right? So GPT with Vision, sometimes referred to GPT-4V, allows the model to take in images and answer questions about them. And you can do a lot more. So if you scroll down, you can see a sample API that you can send to this model and get a specific answer. And this API works very similarly to how you structure APIs for regular ChatGPT, except you're going to be sending in an image along with a prompt. So you're going to have your system prompt, you're going to have your user prompt, and you're also going to send in a URL of the image that you want to query about. So let me show you a sample API request that you can send to this model and get a response back. So here we have a very simple request. We're using this model GPT-4 Vision Preview. We do not have a system prompt, but we do have a user prompt that's very simple. We're just saying, explain the image in one sentence, and then we're passing in a URL of this image. And the image that we're sending is actually a screenshot of Hacker News, which is a very popular kind of technology entrepreneurship threaded message board. And so if we send this request, this model should be able to explain to us in some level of detail exactly what kind of image that we're passing. So let's take a look at the response. And here's the response. The image shows a screenshot of the Hacker News website displaying a list of posted articles, their points, the time they were posted, and the number of comments they have received. Now, of course, my prompt is explain the image in one sentence. If I just do explain the image, it's going to provide us with a lot more details, as you're going to see. All right, and here's the response. Now it's telling us a lot more things about the image. The image displays a partial screenshot of a web page that appears to be from a news aggregator site, Hacker News, the site layout, etc., right? So it really depends on how you structure your prompt, right? You can ask it for a lot of details, you can ask it for little details. It's really up to you. But this is just the beginning. There's so many things that you can do with this model as you're going to see in just a second, that is simply going to blow your mind. And so the next thing that I want to show you is a simple proof of concept app that I built with FlutterFlow, which is my favorite no-code builder, that showcases some interesting use cases that you can accomplish with this model. So here's the app that I built. And before I show you how I build this app, let's go ahead and run this app so that you can see some of the amazing things that you can do with this model. All right, so here's our app. And in this app, I want to show you 3 interesting use cases that you can use this model in order to build next generation apps, okay? Now, this first use case is a very, very simple use case. You can simply build an app that lets users upload an image, and then you can use this model to describe an image. So here I have a page here where you can upload an image and click on process, and then you're going to get a text area that is going to be filled with the description of the image that you have uploaded. So let me show you how this works. So I'm going to click here, and here I'm going to pick an image. So the image that I'm going to pick is going to look like this, which is a profile for a mobile app. Okay, so we're going to select this. We're gonna wait for this to upload. Okay, so it's uploading right there, and now it's displaying this image. Next, we're gonna click on process and wait for this model to identify and describe this image. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, and there you have it. This image appears to be a user interface design for a profile section within an application or a website. Key features include, so it's listing the features, and you can kind of scroll down and see more of the description, right? It's even telling you what some of the text is there, right? Below the name is an email address, right? So it was able to do an OCR right here, which it does really, really well. And it's explaining it more. And so the overall design is modern with a focus on simplicity and ease of navigation. Okay, so while this specific use case is very, very simple, we're just saying to describe this image, and I'm going to show you all my prompts a little bit later in the video. There's still so many things that you can do with it, right? You can ask it to critique the image. You can ask it to give some suggestions. Remember, it's able to pick up on the little details, so it understands a lot about this image. Now, the next use case is actually a very, very powerful use case, and you're gonna see how this works once it finishes loading, okay? And on this page, I built a little game that you can build out into something bigger and more sophisticated if you want. But the way this game works is that you are given 4 images, and then you're given a description, and your job is to match a description to one of the images. Okay, so it's telling us the image shows a colorful and abstract illustration of fitness related items such as dumbbells, a water bottle, sneakers, and a music player with earphones set against a purple background. Okay, so which one of these images do you think this description applies to? Okay, so let's say it's this image, which is not. Let's say you click here and you see X. Let's say you click here, you see X. And then you come over here and you're like, wait a second, this might be it. So you see there's a dumbbell there, some sneakers set against a purple background. We click here and there it is. It's absolutely true. You can also click here if you want, that's false. But if you come back here, it's checked. And so this screen here showcases a possible game that you can build out using this vision technology, okay? Because what's happening here is that we are loading the images and we are picking one of these images at random when we are displaying some text about it. And then we have some interesting logic that, of course, I'm going to be showing you a little bit later in the video, where if you click on the wrong one, we are displaying an X. But if you click on the right one, we are displaying a green checkbox. So a very, very interesting use case that you can roll out and build all kinds of interesting apps, as well as games, as well as you name it. Now, for this last use case that I want to show you, you're definitely going to find this very, very interesting. But before I explain to you exactly what it does, let's go ahead and show you what happens when I upload the image. So This is very, very similar to this first page here, where you need to upload the image, but the response is going to be completely different. So let's go ahead and upload an image. So I'm going to click here, and I am going to select this image here that we used in the first use case that we did a couple of minutes ago. So I'm going to select this here. I'm going to click open, and it has uploaded the image. It's displaying it now. And now we're going to click on process. And instead of describing the image, it's going to do something else entirely. All right, it is done. It has finished processing the image. And instead of simply describing the image like it did in that first use case that I showed you, in this specific example, I asked it to build a UI for a Flutter app, that we can take this code and build custom widgets for a FlutterFlow app that we might be building. So in other words, what we're trying to do right here is we're trying to take an image that a user uploads and generate a UI that we can use in a FlutterFlow screen. So what it's really doing is it's generating itself. It's generating another part of the app. So it went ahead and it generated Flutter code that we can copy and paste into custom widgets in our FlutterFlow app. And hopefully, when everything is said and done, we are going to have custom widgets that look something like this. And we're going to do just that at the end of the video. But right now, I want to go back to FlutterFlow, and I want to show you how I built this exact app. So here I am back in FlutterFlow, and here I want to show you how I built this app out. And it's actually not complicated at all. And remember, if you're a member of our amazing Patreon community, you'll be able to view and or clone this exact app. Now, the first thing I want to show you are my API calls. So if we click here, I only have one API call, and this is a call to Vision API. I have my headers here. I have the URL. If we go into body, I have my body here, and this is exactly how the body should look. And this is very, very similar to the body here. And we need three things to make this API call successful. We need a system prompt, which is optional. We need a user prompt, and we need an image URL. So you can skip the system prompt, but as you're going to see a little bit later in the video, the system prompt can be very, very helpful. And as a result, I have three variables that I'm going to be passing to this API call within my app, right? I have the user prompt, I have the image URL, and I have the system prompt. So if we go into variables, as you can see, I have three of these variables defined here. I have the user prompt, image URL, and the system prompt, right? User prompt is a string, image URL is an image path, and the system prompt is a string right here. And so now if you go into response and test, we can easily test it out. So here I have a URL to that Hacker News screenshot. I'm not passing in the system prompt. I'm only passing in the user prompt, which is important. The system prompt is optional, but as you're going to see, it can be very, very helpful. And now we can click on test API call, and we're going to have a description of our Hacker News screenshot here. All right, so it finished processing, and we've gotten back this JSON response, right? So this should be very, very familiar to all of those who have built apps with regular ChatGPT, right? Because the response is exactly the same as with regular ChatGPT. And here I am. I have my JSON paths defined. More specifically, I only have one defined. And this is the response right here. This is this thing right here, this choices message content, which is pretty much the only thing that I need. Okay, and I'm saving it so that I can use it later. I can easily reference it, retrieve it in my apps. And this is pretty much all for my API stuff. I only have one API call. I don't have anything else. Now, if we go into data types, I have one data type that I have defined, which is called image type. And this is a data type that has a URL and a description. And I'm using this data type for the second example, right? Remember that little game, that little quiz game that we've built where, you know, each image has a URL and has a description. And in order to accomplish that, in order to store all of that, I have defined this image type here. And so if you go into app states, definitely we need to be using app state for various things, because app state is very, very helpful in situations where we're working with API calls and we're getting back some data and we need to show that data. We need to rebuild parts of our UI. This is where you're going to be using app state or page state. And so I have three variables. I have response text, I have response text 2 for another page, and I have my image list, which is for that second example where I'm using various images. In fact, I have 4 images that I have configured with various set images here. And so later on, you will see that when I'm going to be making that API call, our system is going to automatically fill in the description fields for every one of the images, right? Because right now we only have loading. And that way I can display loading when the page loads. But when we hit that API and we get this response back, we want to replace this loading field for each of the images with the actual description, which is what we're going to be doing in that workflow that I'm going to show you in just a second. Now, let's go into our UI. And in terms of the UI, we only have 3 pages. We have the first page, which is a simple description, the second page, which is the quiz, and the third page, which generates actual code that we can use for our custom widgets. And I'm going to show you how well that code works a little bit later in the video. And so in this first example here, when the user clicks on this, we execute a workflow where we are uploading the image that the user specifies into Supabase. So I have Supabase configured, I have Supabase storage configured. All of that is configured, so when the user clicks on the image, that image is uploaded into Supabase. And if you're not familiar with Supabase, definitely watch this video right there. It's gonna explain a ton of concepts that you can put into use when building your apps. And so the user clicks on it, the image is uploaded, and now we have the image in our system. The next thing that the user needs to do is the user needs to click this button called process. So when they click on this button, we have this flow here, very, very simple flow. We simply run this API call with these variables, right? Here's the user prompt that I'm setting, and I'm also passing the URL of the image. So remember, when we uploaded the image, we're storing it in Supabase storage. And once we upload it, we get back the URL of the image. And this is what I'm passing here. Note, I'm not setting a system prompt here. I'm skipping it because it's not required in this specific use case. Now, when we get this data back, I'm updating app state. And the only thing that I'm doing is I'm setting this response variable. And if you recall, this response variable, this response text variable, is responsible for displaying data here. So as soon as we get a response back, we get this text, the description of the image, I update our app state, which in turn rebuilds this page. And as a result, you can see this text, this description showing up dynamically, right? Because if we come over here, if we go to this button, click here, you see I have this rebuild current page set. If I had this no rebuild, then you would not have that dynamic behavior. So this is a big advantage of using app state or page state, is that you can rebuild the page and have new data automatically show. So this is our first page here. Now for the second page, there's lots of things happening, right? There's lots of interesting things happening, and as a result, we have this cool behavior. Remember, we have this really, really nice behavior where you can click all of these things and it's going to display various things. So depending on what you click on, you're going to see different results. So we're going to go back here. And so what's happening here is that the first thing that I want to explain to you is that when you click on something, we are recording where exactly the user clicked on, right? So if we come over here, I have this flow editor and there's only one thing here. And what I'm doing is I am updating item clicked. I have item clicked as a page state variable, right? So if you go over here, you see I have a bunch of page state variables. And in fact, I have a ton. I have 4 because I need to keep track of various things that are happening. So I have item clicked. I also have item correct, which is the ID of the image that corresponds to the description there, right? And this could be set randomly. with each page load. It could be gotten from a database. You can do anything that you want with it as long as you have it set here. I also have a loop index that I'm going to be using when I'm going to be looping, as I'm going to show you in a second. And we have the response text that's going to be displayed right here. Now, when the user clicks on this thing here, this is a stack because I'm displaying various images conditionally, depending on what's happening. We are essentially recording which item the user clicked on. So this is item 0, item 1, item 2, item 3. So depending on where they clicked on, we need to record it. And based on where they clicked on, we are going to be displaying either the regular image, which is what's being displayed when the page loads. And depending on what's happening with the screen, where the user clicked on, we might display the regular image, the image itself. We might also display the check mark. This is this green check mark, right? I have the image of this green check mark here. Or if it's incorrect, we're going to be displaying this red check mark. So I have this stack here with 3 possible results, 3 possible states you can think of. And in fact, states is the best way to think about it. If you want to display 3 different states, depending on what's happening, I always put them inside of a stack. It just makes things a lot easier and kind of, it makes sense right away to others as to what's happening in the app. So if you come over here, the second one, we see that this is a conditional, right? And so this conditional is this green check mark, right? And this green check mark shows up when a specific condition is true. And that's actually 2 conditions need to be true for the green check mark to show up. Item click needs to be the item in the list. Okay, so meaning that the user clicked on that specific item. We can't click on one item and show the checkbox somewhere else, right? It needs to be in that item. And then it also needs to be the correct item. So the user needed to click on that item, and it also needs to be correct. And if we go to this third state here, very, very similar. It also needs to be the item that was clicked, but it needs to be the item that is not correct, right? So item clicked is equal to index in list, which is the item that the user clicked on, but it's not the correct item. So, you know, the user clicked on it, yes, but that is not the correct item. So we're going to display the X. Very, very simple behavior, and obviously very, very powerful, right? It gives this visual effect, this visual response as to what's happening. And I really, really wanted to do that. And as a result, it kind of looks really, really cool, right? It has this, and the user knows exactly what's happening, right? And you can obviously adapt it. You can change it around. You can do anything that you want. Now, the most important thing here is when the page loads, we execute this workflow here, right? This workflow has 4 actions, and most of them are inside of a loop. And why do we need to have them in a loop? Well, because we need to run that API call 4 times. We have 4 images, so we need to run that API call for each of the images. So here I have my loop control variable, which is a page state variable, loop index. And so while loop index is less than 4, remember, loop index starts at 0, right? So while it's less than 4 means it's going to execute 4 times, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. When it reaches 4, it's going to exit out of the loop. So basically, if you know it's going to start from 0, you can just put less than 4, which is going to make it execute 4 times. Next thing, we're going to execute this API call. And here I'm setting in the user prompt, describe the image in 1 sentence. We want to be concise. And I'm also passing in the image from app state, right? I'm saying, give me that specific image type at that loop index, right? That loop index is going to vary. And then we have a check if it's succeeded. Update app state. And what do we want to update this app state? Well, we are updating the description. Remember, initially description is just set to loading, but as this loop continues and as the API calls are executed, we're going to get these descriptions back from the API call. So we want to update the description, right? Very, very important. And we also need to increment the loop variable. If you do not do this, your loop is simply going to go on forever, right? You're going to have something called an infinite loop. So always, if you're doing loops, you need to make sure that you're incrementing the variable, because if you do not increment the variable, it's always going to be 0, which means that this is always going to be true. You want this loop to break out of this whole thing at one point or another. You don't want that loop to continue indefinitely. And so you always want to make sure that you increment the variable last. And so after all is said and done, after we execute the API calls and we update our app state, I am basically updating this page state and I'm setting an arbitrary value to item correct. Okay, so I'm basically saying, okay, we've loaded the data. Now here's the correct value that I want you to work on. And as soon as it knows which value that we're talking about, it's going to be able to display this thing right here, right? Because we have this value here that is going to look up at the correct value and it's going to pull the description from that image. So if the value is 3, item correct is 3, it's going to go to that last element and just pull the description. And the system knows which value is correct and where the user is clicking on, as I explained a few moments back, right? The system knows everything. And as a result, I can specify any value that I want. I can specify a random value and everything is going to work, because the system is going to not only display the right description from that, related to that value, related to that specific image in the app state, but it's also going to know whether to show the red X or the green check mark as the user is clicking around. So everything is done. When you're going to be cloning this app, you can simply change the value to make it 0, 1. You can make it random if you want, and everything is still gonna work. And that's pretty much how this page works. We just have a grid view that displays all the images from app state, and then you have a ton of logic on top of it to ensure that everything works smoothly together. Now, last but not least, we have here a use case where a user uploads an image, and instead of simply describing it, we are going to ask the system to generate code that will resemble the uploaded image, right? Which is exactly how this app works, right? So if I go back to this app right here, this app is open source. And if you look up some of the code in the app, you have all of these prompts, right? So you have a Tailwind prompt. This is for generating like Tailwind, which is a library for creating HTML, right? For creating websites. And this is the prompt that the app is using. You can also scroll down. You have a Bootstrap, you have a React, and then you have the user prompt. So depending on what kind of app that you are trying to build, if it's going to be a simple web page, then you can use this prompt here. Now, because we're working with Flutter and FlutterFlow, we need to have this app actually generate Flutter code, right, as custom widgets. And so what I did was I went to ChatGPT and I asked it to take this prompt and change it to a prompt that's going to generate Flutter code, right? So this is what I said. Here's a prompt used to instruct an LLM to generate code. Alter the prompt to generate Flutter code instead. Make sure the prompt generates code using widget composition instead of as one large app widget. And this is exactly what it did. It went ahead and converted that prompt in the app to a prompt that's going to be useful for generating all kinds of Flutter UI. So Flutter widgets, FlutterFlow widgets, etc., etc. And this is the exact prompt that I'm using in this API call. So this works exactly like the first use case, right? The first demo, except if we go to the button over here, we open it up, we take a look at the variables that I'm passing to this API call. I have my user prompt. This is a simple user prompt. And for the user prompt, I'm just telling it generate code for a web page that looks exactly like this. So it's a slightly different user prompt. I'm also passing the image URL, and unlike the previous two examples, I'm passing the system prompt as well here. Remember, in the previous two examples, we were not passing the system prompt because it wasn't important. But here it is important because we need to tell the system what kind of responses we are looking for. We need to tell the system how to answer our queries. Here you can take a look at the raw request here, right? We have the system prompt, and this is the system prompt that ChatGPT generated. And we also have the user prompt here, as well as a screenshot of the app. And if you execute this call, this is what you're going to be getting back. And this is exactly what our app comes back to us with, right? This is kind of what it responds with. And essentially it's generating an entire Flutter app for us. And what we can do is we can take all of this, we can copy this, and we can take this code here and use it for building custom FlutterFlow widgets and see if the end result is going to be similar to that screenshot. And in this case, we uploaded a screenshot of a profile, right? So this is exactly what we uploaded here. And this is what it generated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to attempt to build a custom widget with this generated code, and you can see exactly how I can do that. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to try to create a custom widget with the code that it generated. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to say widget, and I'm going to say profile widget. Okay, we're going to paste in the boilerplate here. And now what we need to do is we need to paste most of this code where you see it says here return container, because right now it's basically returning an empty container, which is the default, because this allows you to get started and, you know, to build any kind of custom widget that you want. And so what we need to do is we need to take the code that we've got and adapt it here. So I went ahead and pasted this code into an editor, and that way you can see all the various pieces of this code. And what we need to do is we just need to copy everything below my app. We don't need my app because that's provided by FlutterFlow. All we need to do is copy all of this here. And what you want to do is you want to copy this, come back over here, and you want to paste it at the bottom here, okay? And where it said return container, we want to return this user profile page. Okay, right there. Now you can format it. And now our app, instead of returning an empty container, is going to return everything else. We're also going to save this widget right here. We saved it, and hopefully there are no bugs. And I'm not seeing any issues, except it needs a URL to a placeholder profile image, which we can replace. So let's go ahead and find a profile image and replace it with this. Let's see if it works. So here's a random user photos page. So let's go ahead and pick a random profile. How about this guy right here? We can just copy that image address. We can paste it. This is it right here. And let's go ahead and paste it in here, save. Let's go ahead and compile our custom widget. And hopefully it's going to not only compile, but hopefully it's also going to be similar to our original image that we uploaded initially. All right, so it finished compiling. There are no issues, which is a very, very good sign. Let's go ahead and create a new page so that we can display this widget on its own page. So we're going to come over here. We're going to say new page, create blank. We're going to say profile, create page. And here we can insert the custom widget that our app has graciously generated for us. So we're going to come over here, insert this profile widget. Okay, and let's see how this profile looks like. Let's go ahead and make it bigger. Okay, let's go ahead and expand it. 350, let's make it 400. All right, and this is our custom widget, and it's actually not bad at all. Okay, so we can even center it. We can wrap this in a row, center this row. Look at this. Okay, so let's go ahead and give this page a nav bar so that we can display. And let's go ahead and run our app. All right, here's our app. And if we go to the last page, we are seeing this custom widget. And if we go to the original, this is what the original looks like. So it's kind of similar, but not exactly. And I have a feeling if we tweak that prompt and change some of the fonts, we're going to get very, very close. Okay, we're going to get very, very close. And as you saw with some of the examples here on this GitHub page for this app, you can easily see that this app has some incredible potential. So when I first saw it, I was definitely blown away. And now you can see why. And so by now you have realized that there's so many things that you can do with it. I just gave you some examples. I just hopefully stoked your imagination, but there's so many things that you can do with it. You can take it to the next level. You can build amazing quizzes, apps. It just opens up a ton of new possibilities. And so if you're looking to go in that direction, you want to build apps with this Vision AI, and this is very, very powerful. It's definitely not a gimmick. It can read a lot of things. It can describe it. It can offer critiques. So many interesting things. Even just talking about it, I am getting a ton of ideas for interesting apps. Then you definitely want to be able to view and or clone this exact app that I built, because there's so many things that I built out, and all the little details, all the little tips and tricks is going to save you a ton of time. Because if you don't see the app, you do not see how I did it, you'll have to do it from scratch. And that means more time building things instead of actually building the app. And so you will be able to easily view and or clone this app when you become a member of our amazing Patreon community. And remember, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're not only going to get access to this app, you're going to get access to all the apps that I have on this channel. They're all there. Every single app that I build, I make it available there. You can join our discussion. You can ask questions, and our amazing community is going to help you out regardless of what kind of things you are working on. But that's not all. When you join our amazing community, you're going to get access to extra content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, and our Patreon exclusive masterclass series where I do deep dives on specific topic that the community cares about. So I recently did a Q&A, and later on this week I'm going to be doing another masterclass of a very exciting product that a lot of you really seem to like. So you definitely do not want to miss that, and you're going to have access to it as a member of our Patreon community. But above all, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, and that is greatly appreciated. So if you want to level up your no-code game, then it's a no-brainer. Definitely become a member and get a ton of extra content that's going to make you a much better no-code developer.